If you think about marketers, we spend a lot of money figuring out what do customers want. And we go invest the money to create that product that's what they want. And then kind of this cruel twist of irony is the person keeps consuming it, they now like it less. And so it really creates this moving target that makes consumers less loyal. Marketers can't charge as much for their product. Consumers are consuming less of the product. And likewise, the consumer's not necessarily left better off either. I mean, they would like to be able to just keep consuming their favorite forever and loving it just as much as that first time. But satiation, seeps in, and now consumers are constantly, facing this task of finding new and different things just to stay just as happy. One thing we've explored is this idea of variety amnesia, and what it seems like people do is the following. Imagine you have, a sushi restaurant that you would like to go to, every Friday, and so the first Friday it's great, the next Friday, still okay. Third Friday, maybe you don't enjoy it so much then. And one thing we realized is that if you think about that situation, every time you go to that restaurant, you've had probably 20 meals in between those two. Right? So you're having actually a lot of variety in your life. The problem is every Friday, you get in that context and say, it seems like I always have sushi on Fridays. I'm tired of that. And so what we looked at in our research is, can we help people kind of realize all the variety they do have in their lives? And by pointing out to them, before that sushi meal, hey, how many other meals have you had since the last time you had sushi? And if they realize, oh, well, actually, I've had a lot of different foods, now that sushi will taste better. One group that, for which satiation is a particularly pressing problem, is with NASA and the astronauts. In that, in their situation, they pick a few foods before the mission, and then once they're up there, they don't have a lot of variety of choices. They're limited to what they have, and that's pretty much it. And so one common issue that's been raised at the end of missions from astronauts is how sick they get of the food they have. They're just kind of tired of eating the same things over and over. And where it's particularly pressing is not only does it affect kind of the well-being of the astronauts in terms of happiness and everyday attitude, it's also that it becomes a challenge to get them enough calories. How do we get them to keep eating given the stress that they're under? And so one thing we're exploring with NASA is, can we use some of these techniques that we've done with satiety to keep the food interesting for the astronauts? One thing we're doing with NASA is trying to figure out, are there more natural ways to still trigger people's thoughts of all the variety they have? And so one research that we'll do here on the ground is looking at, for instance, giving people electronic devices that, or even just texting them or whatnot, to remind them, how many different foods have you had in the last 3 days? Or, what are you eeating right now? How long has it been since you had it? So just little quick questions that you can imagine the astronauts answering as well, that help kind of trigger those thoughts of, wow, I actually am not eating the same thing over and over.